Good morning.
Good morning, ma'am.
Very good morning, children. So you all give your mock test.
Yeah,
How was it?
totally easy.
Easy it was. And you did not face any problems logging in, giving the test, logging out, submitting
There
the
was
test.
some problems initially, but then they got resolved.
Okay. Like what? What was the problem?
Like in my case, I was in the morning, my laptop crashed, so I did not do it on the laptop. So my profile was not opening on the Argus app only.
Oh,
So then ma'am told me to do it from another phone, and then I tried, so it happened.
acha.
There was some internal server problem.
Okay. Otherwise, some children were not able to take the test. No, Arjun didn't. Arjun,
There
you
was some
didn't.
problem while submitting. So, like when I clicked on submit and it showed the review of the questions, it said I
Okay.
had attempted all, but when I got the result, it showed I had not attempted 11 of them.
Oh, acha, acha. Huh. So you will give it again, is it? What will they say?
I don't know. The ma'am said she'll talk to us seniors
Okay.
and see.
Okay. 27 children are already there.
More left to come, maybe.
Yeah, but it's already, what's the time of starting? 11:05. Okay. Now only.
And it's around 11:07.
Right. Okay, I'll start.
Yeah.
Let them come and we will join. If you guys see that any child is waiting, because in the side part, when I get into share screen mode, I can't see the first screen. Okay. So if you see that somebody is waiting, you can unmute yourself and just tell me to admit that person. Actually, I do get a pop-up. I get a pop-up and I immediately click admit. But sometimes if the pop-up doesn't come, you guys tell me that such and such person is waiting and then I will go and admit. Okay. I think most of them have come. So let me start the class. So yesterday, I think we did the backstory of how, Chanakya helped Chandragupta Maurya to establish the Mauryan dynasty. And then we also saw the literary sources. Did we discuss the literary sources, children?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Did we finish this? Because I take 2-3 classes, I get confused where I was.
And this was also done.
Yeah. Yeah.
Megastheny is also done. I think from Stupa. I have to start from the Stupa.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. You have to start from Sanchi Stupa.
Okay. Okay. So this is the Sanchi Stupa. Okay, Aryaman Baruwa. Wait. Yeah. You can see this dome-like structure. This dome-like structure is a solid dome. It's not a hollow dome where people can enter and they can go and see. This is not a hall which is in dome shape. It is not like that. The whole thing is a solid structure. And this stupa is a symbol of Buddha. That means the Buddhists believe that this is Buddha himself. Okay. So what happened is when Buddha died, some of his body parts, some bones, okay, nails, hair, teeth, such things, which were in his body, from his body. The flesh and all anyway will get, decomposed and all, but the bones, the teeth, the hair, and nails, and these kind of things were taken and in different parts, they were kept in boxes or caskets. A casket is a box. In a small box, they placed this, and this they placed in the foundation of the stupa. So what did they do? They kept that, and on top of it, they constructed this dome-shaped structure, which is made with stones and unburnt bricks. Okay, with stones and unburnt bricks, they made this structure. And this was considered to be the physical body of Buddha. Now, did you understand? Like they thought this is Buddha. So not physical, spiritual body. Sorry, spiritual body. Buddha's physical body is destroyed. He's dead. So this is his spiritual body. So this was considered as this thing. So people, Buddhists, what do? They come to the stupa and there is an open space around this dome-shaped structure. So they sit in meditation. So they come and so it is like the spiritual body of Buddha is in front of them. So in his presence, they do meditation. Are we clear? So this is the stupa. So it is a semicircular, semi-spherical, solid dome-like structure of unburned bricks and stones. Special significance, what is it? It represents a spiritual body of Buddha and it contains the relics of Buddha. So these things are called relics, the bone, the nail, the hair and all that. So relics of Buddha such as hair, teeth or bones, they are placed in a casket and that is placed in the base of the dome. A casket containing these relics is placed at the base of the dome. Now you can see this is a gateway. What is this? This is a gateway. Okay. So there are 4 such gateways in the stupa. So you can see a detailed picture of the gateway here. Okay. The foundation of the stupa was laid by Ashoka in 3rd century BC. Okay. Ashoka made the stupa. There are 4 gateways in 4 directions and carved panels depicting events from the life of Buddha and from Jataka tales. So this particular gateway, you can see that there are a lot of carvings. Okay, these carvings contain what? It contains stories of the Jataka tales are carved on this. Okay, these are panels. So all these panels have been carved with stories from the Jataka tales or any incident from the life of Buddha. For example, we know that Buddha sat under the Bodh Gaya tree and he got enlightenment. Correct? So there may be that people tree with Buddha sitting under it, which depicts him getting enlightenment. So those kind of scenes from Buddha's life are carved in this. And then it is surmounted by lion capitals. Can you see these lions here? Lion cap. Now this is a pillar. Children, you should understand capital has many meanings. Capital means the top part of a pillar is also called a capital. Okay, any pillar, the top part of the pillar is called a capital. So this is the top of the pillar. Okay, so the pillar is surmounted by lions. Okay, and then lion capitals, and it contains what? It contains Buddhist symbols like see all these wheels. Can you see? So like wheel, people tree. So here there are a lot of trees and all that. So people tree, lotus, all these are Buddhist symbols. So Buddhist symbols are carved on this. So you have beautiful gateways on 4 directions, which have got lion capitals, which has got panels, and the panels are beautifully carved with the stories in the Jataka tales or stories from Buddha's life. So are we clear with what is a stupa, and are you clear with the, what do you say, the description of Sanchi stupa? It is one of the most important religious places of Buddhists. For Buddhists, this is a very sacred place. So when they go on a pilgrimage, they usually go to such places where Buddha spent his, where Buddha himself lived for some time, or where Buddha was born, where Buddha died, where Buddha got enlightenment. All these areas are very sacred places for the Buddhists. And the Sanchi Stupa also is a very sacred place for the Buddhists. Yes, Indraneel, you can unmute yourself and ask me the question. What is it?
Ma'am, in the Sanchi Stupa, is there any idol inside this?
No, beta, I told you, no, it's a solid dome. You can't go inside the dome.
Okay, ma'am. So in this where's the Sanchi Stupa located?
It is near Bhopal. Near Bhopal, close to Bhopal, there is a place called Sanchi. The name of the place is Sanchi. That's why it's called Sanchi Stupa.
Ma'am.
Okay.
Yes.
So, ma'am, basically the 4 gateways that are there.
Your voice broke in between. Repeat.
Ma'am, so the gateways that are there, the 4 gateways in 4 directions, they are there outside the dome, like to see
Yeah,
the dome.
that is the gate to the dome. No. Now what you can see here, see this is the gate, then you enter. There's lot of space now between the dome and
Yeah.
this gate also, open space. Maybe in the previous
Yeah,
picture we can
but
see.
in the dome we can't enter. There's not. It's just
No. You have to sit around the dome and
Yeah.
do meditation.
okay.
Okay. Okay, next.
So the carvings are on the dome, like
They're
Yes.
not there on the dome. It is on this
outside
On
gateway.
the gateway.
On this panels in the gateway. It's not on the dome. See, the dome is just plain structure. Can you see? It's just made of stones and it is plastered with some kind of substance, adhesive. It is not cement. Those days there was no cement. So
So
some
then-
kind, so limestone or something they used to use.
So then those body parts of Buddha that you mentioned, they are there
They are-
inside the dome.
They are
Those were the
placed at the base.
foundation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The first they have kept those body parts of Buddha in a box. They have placed the box in the foundation. Then they have made the dome on top of it.
Oh.
Okay. Okay. Now
Yes.
let's go to the next slide. Now this is the extent of the Mauryan Empire during Chandragupta's time. I showed you the previous map where we saw the extent of the Mauryan Empire during Ashoka's time. So Ashoka was a grandson. At his time, till here it was. But this was the first king who laid the foundation. I already told you all these areas were under the Greek satraps or kshatraps. They were all conquered by him, and then he conquered Magadha also. He became the king. All these areas were one by one, he defeated the kings and he became the king. Now, he was the founder of the Mauryan Empire. According to legend, he had been dismissed from the service of the Nandas. He met Kautilya at Takshashila and both joined hands to destroy the Nanda dynasty. This exact story, has a lot of variations. Where Chanakya met Chandragupta, it is different books will tell you different stories. Anyway, that is not important. What is important is Chanakya and Chandragupta, they met each other and Chanakya helped Chandragupta to become the king. After a long series of battles, the Nanda dynasty at Patliputra fell and a new dynasty with Chandragupta Maurya as emperor emerged. After the death of Alexander, his territories in the northwest part of India were also taken over by Chandragupta Maurya. So all these areas, everything came under his control. In 305, India was attacked by Seleucus, the former general of Alexander. Now, can you see this Kandahar? Kandahar is in Afghanistan. Okay, children? So this area, Baluchistan, Afghanistan, these are the areas which was ruled by Seleucus. I told you when Seleucus, when Alexander died, his governors became the rulers. And so the Seleucus was his governor. Alexander's governor who was taking care of these areas. But when Alexander died, he became the ruler. So what did he do? He attacked Chandragupta, okay, the former general of Alexander. But he was defeated. And then a treaty, a peace treaty was signed between Chandragupta Maurya and Seleucus. According to the treaty, Chandragupta Maurya got Kabul, Kandahar, Herat and Baluchistan. So all the areas which are in most of the areas which were under the control of Seleucus were given to Chandragupta Maurya. But what did Seleucus do? He gave his daughter Helen in marriage to Chandragupta. So he got his daughter married to Chandragupta, and in return, Chandragupta gave him some 500 elephants. That is also written in another book. I read this, that Chandragupta, now they became relatives. No, he has married. So Seleucus, Chandragupta Maurya gifted 500 elephants to Seleucus. Now, did you understand? Chandragupta Maurya extended his empire from Kabul and Kandahar in the west to Mysore in south, and Bengal in east to Saurashtra in west. So Saurashtra is the Gujarat part. This is called Saurashtra. Saurashtra, Bengal. Now maybe the Mysore Empire those days, it was still here. Those days, the Mysore king would have been so powerful that his kingdom might have extended up to this place. Otherwise, Mysore is here. Currently, what we call Mysore is actually located here. But those days, the kingdoms used to be big and all that. You know, the extent of the kingdom used to keep changing under different kings. Probably the Mysore Empire extended up to here. So you can see that Chandragupta's kingdom touched the Mysore Empire down in the south, in the west, Saurashtra, in the east, Bengal, and in the north, Kandahar, Herat, and all these areas is the north. Are we clear? So this is the extent of the empire. And then, okay, next. Bindusara. Now, children, in your syllabus, Bindusara is not there. Only this part is cut in your book. When you get the book, I will do the markings. Okay, I will not give them out now. Anytime soon, you will get the books. When you get the books, I will give you the markings. Okay. The whole chapter, nothing is cut except Bindusara. And in your textbook, Bindusara is such a small paragraph. That's it. This small paragraph only is cut. Everything else is there. Now, Bindusara succeeded his father, Chandragupta Maurya. He conquered many parts of South India and defeated 16 rulers. Now, can you see this light? Now, can you see this area, children? This area was the addition made by Bindusara to his father's kingdom. So you can see the dark part which is there till here, all this area. This area was conquered by Chandragupta Maurya. This much empire, he got it from his father in inheritance. He added this area. Okay, this area was added by Chandragupta. Now, can you see this Kalinga, which is in Orissa? This area, children, was ruled by very powerful kings. Even Bindusara or Chandragupta Maurya could not defeat Kalinga kings and join it to their empire. So Kalinga remained independent even though such a huge area had come under the control of the Mauryas. Did you understand? So the Maurya kings were able to bring such a big thing under their control, but Kalinga remained elusive. Elusive means what? They couldn't get it. That is the meaning of it. So then what happened? So he conquered all this and he faced a revolt in Takshashila. So this is Takshashila is there in Gandhar. Okay. So once the people of Takshashila, they revolted against Bindusara. So at that time, Ashoka was a small boy. Small means not very old, young boy only he was. Ashoka went to quell the revolt. That means he went to fight with the rebellious people, and he defeated them and he stopped the revolt. Okay. He maintained friendly relations with the rulers of Greece. Yes, because his father himself had married a Greek lady. So the Greek people had, by then, a lot of Greek people were living in India, and especially in these areas, lot of Greek people were living. So sort of, the Greek influence was there in Buddhism. Indo-Greek culture. Because of the presence of Greeks, a new fusion happened. Indo-Greek culture was quite common in those days, especially in architecture, sculpture. The way Buddha sculpture we see today, the sculpture of Buddha, that is the style of Greek sculpture. The Greek people, they make their sculptures like that. So that we copied that style of making sculpture, and we have carved Buddha in that style. Okay. So that is Indo-Greek culture. We can see the influence of Greek culture in India. Okay, that is about Bindusara. This is because it's a link. See, I am telling you about Bindusara because he is the link between Chandragupta Maurya and Ashoka. But as far as exam goes, all these things will not be asked. Next. Then came Ashoka, who became the next king. He was known by two names, Devanam Priya and Priyadarshi. Devanam Priya means the beloved of the gods, and Priyadarshi is the beautiful one. So he was very good looking. So he was called Devanam Priya and Priyadarshi. This is Ashoka, okay? And this was his kingdom. Now, can you see that this part, Kalinga, this was conquered by Ashoka. Now, when he came to power, he already got this whole kingdom from his father and grandfather. Now, this particular part was invincible. What is the meaning of invincible? That means so strong that they are not able to defeat them. So that became a raging ambition with Ashoka. Ashoka became mad about conquering Kalinga. He said that I have to get Kalinga into the empire because that was the only one which was left, which was not coming inside the Mauryan Empire. So he was struck by this ambition to, at any cost, win Kalinga. So with that kind of a, obsession, he attacked Kalinga. So Ashoka fought the famous Kalinga War. According to Megasthenes, the Greek historian at the court, the ruler of Kalinga had a powerful infantry, cavalry, and elephants. So Kalinga king was very, very powerful and very strong, and he had a very huge army. Okay, infantry means foot soldiers. You should know the meanings of these words. Foot soldiers are called infantry. Cavalry means horsemen. Okay, and elephants. So he had a huge army. Both sides suffered losses. Both the sides suffered lot of losses because it was a very bloody battle. Because he was also a very powerful king. Now he also gave a very stiff resistance. So this war was a very bloody war where lot of people died. Ashoka won the war, but it is estimated that more than 1 lakh soldiers died. This is the estimate, that more than 1 lakh soldiers died. So that is why when Ashoka went after the over, when he went to the battlefield, this is how they describe in the books. In the books, they describe that scene was very heart-wrenching. Why? Because there were rivers of blood flowing. So many people had died. Literally, you can see rivers of blood flowing, people losing their limbs, hands, legs, heads cut off here and there, and the women wailing because, this war became such a big war that almost every male member of the Kalinga was part of the, war. So everybody in Kalinga, the losses were more. So what happened? Every house lost their male member. Those days, only the male members were listed into the army. So either the son, the husband, or the father was killed. So all the families sort of became orphaned. They don't have any father or brother or this thing, son. So all the male members were dead. So it was a very tough time for the families because they had lost the anchor of the family, so to say. So because of that, there was so much of unhappiness and crying and, lot of this thing. When he saw the people lamenting and, feeling so bad for losing their loved ones and all that, all these scenes, somehow disturbed Ashoka a lot. So after the Kalinga War, the kind of destruction that happened, that completely led to a change of heart. So he was moved by those scenes and he decided that violence is absolutely unnecessary. Violence is bad. Nothing comes out of violence. Okay, he felt he was victorious. He was a king. But in fact, he got Kalinga. The ambition that he had, he got fulfilled. But was he happy? No, he was not happy. So even after winning, he was not happy. So that's when he realized that happiness doesn't depend on winning or losing and all those things. And really, is he happy? He questioned himself. And then he said that, what did I do? He really felt bad that he was the cause for so much of destruction. And then he decided that he is going to completely leave violence and he became a Buddhist. Okay. Now, Chandragupta, his grandfather, he adopted Jainism. He became a Jain. Okay, Chandragupta became a Jain, and towards the last years of his life, he gave up his kingdom to Bindusara, and he went to the south because his kingdom was so big. No, it went up to Mysore and all. He went to a place called Shravana Belagola. Okay, and there he settled. All his last life till he died, he was there in Mysore, because that was the place which is famous. It's a pilgrimage place for Jains. So Chandragupta Maurya was a Jain. Now Bindusara, we don't know. It's not very clear whether he followed the Jain traditions or what. But Ashoka, he followed Buddhism. So he decided to convert to Buddhism. What were the consequences? Profound effect on the personality of Ashoka, on the policies of Ashoka. Once it changed his heart, he changed the rules and regulations and everything, laws that he made for his kingdom. He abandoned the policy of conquest. He said, no, that is Digvijay. What is the policy of conquest? It was called Digvijay. That means by force and ambition, victory in all directions. That was the war cry. So he used to say, Digvijay. So when they go for war, they used to cry like that. All the, what do you say? All the, what do you say? The soldiers used to shout like that. They used to have that war cry, you know, Digvijay karke. And from Digvijay, what became the clarion call? The clarion call became Dhamma Vijay. Dhamma means dharma. Okay. In dharma, in Sanskrit, that word in Pali language, which was the common language of people, they used to say, they used to pronounce dharma as Dhamma. Okay. So Dhamma Vijay. So Dhamma Vijay became the clarion call. So now they said it is not victory of or having conquest by war. It is conquest of the self. That means we should overcome our own bad qualities and we have to become good. So Dhamma Vijay became the policy. He declared Buddhism as a state religion. Naturally, he became Buddhist. So he said that the religion of the Mauryan Empire is Buddhism. But there was religious tolerance. Remember this. There was religious tolerance. Nobody was, no Hindu was forced to become a Buddhist. 3 religions existed side by side at that time. Jainism, Buddhism, and Hinduism. All the 3 religions were coexisting very peacefully. There was a respect for each other's religion. There was no force. There was no attempt to convert anybody to any religion. But he propagated Buddhism. Because he became a Buddhist, on a personal level, he started spreading the teachings of Buddha. And because of Ashoka, Buddhism has gone and it has crossed the borders of India. Jainism could never cross the borders of India and become a religion in other parts of the world. But Buddhism, because of Ashoka, you know, Ashoka sent his son and daughter to Sri Lanka to spread Buddhism. He appointed many people called Dhamma Mahamatras. You know, Mahamatra means he is an official. He is an officer. Okay. The Mahamatra means officer. Dhamma Mahamatra means an officer who is going to protect religion, protect dharma. So he sent his Dhamma Mahamatras to China, okay, to Southeast Asia, in all the Singapore, all these places he sent. Because those days, Ashoka's empire was so big, he had trade relations with all these countries. Okay. A lot of trading used to happen with all these countries. So already there were trade relations. So he sent all his Dhamma Mahamatras there to spread the word of Buddha. And that's how, you know, today we know, no, that China, Buddhism is a very big religion in China. And even in Japan, they follow Buddhism. So in many Southeast Asian countries, Buddhism is followed. So that is how Buddhism spread because of the efforts of Ashoka. He declared Buddhism as a state religion. War prisoners were used as agricultural workers. So no punishment was given to war prisoners. Those who were defeated in the war and they were alive and they were surviving, they were used as workers. They were given jobs to do farming and all that. And slowly the whole kingdom became very peaceful and peace-loving nation. So they went to such an extent of non-violence that slowly, Ashoka even started having a small No, the army size also went on decreasing, and there was decline in military preparedness. That means what? It's a dangerous situation. If a foreign king attacks, they are not ready, because now they have gone into that zone of non-violence. So they are not, preparing, they are not training themselves in army, in, facing enemies and, warfare. In warfare techniques, regularly they should be practicing. But were they doing that? They were not doing it. So there was a decline in military preparedness. Now, did you understand? And efficiency. So this were the this is Kalinga War, and this is the consequence of the Kalinga War. This is the Samadhi of Chandragupta. Okay, I told you Chandragupta spent his last days
Ma'am,
in
I had a doubt.
Mysore. Yeah.
Ma'am, Ashoka only fought one war of the Kalinga, because as we know, all of that means all of
Yes, correct.
him before
Yes.
only.
Yeah,
And only Kalinga was left. And
No,
then
no.
southern part is still left.
See what happened. When his father Bindusara was ruling, all those we saw, no, Bindusara conquered all these southern territories. Those wars also Ashoka fought, because he was his son.
Yeah.
Okay, but those victories are not attributed to Ashoka, because he was not the king. Whoever is the king, we say that he won the war. We don't say his son won the war. Na? Actual war may be fought by the generals in the army, or it may not be fought by the king at all. It could be possible that Bindusara never went into battle. But still the victory will be given to Bindusara, because he was the king.
Okay.
So Kalinga was not the only war he fought. He fought many wars, but at that time he was under Bindusara.
But Kalinga was the only war that he fought as a king.
As a king, correct.
Yeah.
As a king, that was the only war he fought.
Okay.
Okay, Mauryan administration. Now, can you see this? This picture is the Samadhi of Chandragupta Maurya. It is in Chandragiri Hills. Chandragiri Hills is in Mysore, okay, close to Shravanabelagola. I told you, last days he spent there. So this is his tomb, you can say, final resting place. Okay, then Mauryan Empire was very vast. We have seen how big it is. Was vast, and it had an all India character. What does this mean? That means, the first time there was this kingdom which was looking like it is one huge nation. It had an all India character. Different parts of India were unified under one king. Provinces were handed over by Seleucus. How did it become pan-India? Some provinces were handed over by Seleucus, okay, and it remained with the Mauryan Empire till the end of Ashoka's rule. Ashoka was the last powerful ruler of Mauryan Empire. After Ashoka, the rulers who ascended the throne were weak, and they could not control such a huge empire, and slowly the Mauryan Empire disintegrated and it declined. So till the end of Ashoka's rule, this whole India was under the Mauryans, and Bindusara also established his rule in South India. No other king before them that had done that. And so all these things, then the Chandragupta Maurya spent his last days in Shravanabelagola in Karnataka, which speaks volumes about the all India character of Mauryan Empire. So all this shows that the Mauryan Empire was so huge and vast and unified and under one single king. Because of this, there were some advantages. What are the advantages of one big, huge kingdom? It marked the end of small states. In India, there were no more small states. All were part of one big kingdom. It helped in establishing trade links with foreign countries. Now, they got control over ports and everything. So having trade links with foreign countries on both the sides, that India is like a peninsula. So on the right side, for you, which is that, whatever, on the Bay of Bengal side, they got this Orissa, and all these ports were there for them to do trade with Southeast Asian countries. And on the Gujarat side, they had ports which were under their control, and they could have trade links with Europe and the western side of the world. So from east and west in both the sides, they could do trade because all the ports were under the control of the kings. And then Ashoka's victory over Kalinga, the era of conquest and wars was over, because now they stopped concentrating on wars and on maintaining an army and all. They started concentrating on social and economic development. So now they concentrated on building things, on progressing. So this was a period when there was a lot of economic prosperity. People were very wealthy and they were very happy and very prosperous. It made India strong. Now there was one big ruler, so even foreigners were afraid to invade India. Okay, so it made India strong and helped the Mauryan kings face foreign aggressors successfully. These were this is a very important question, children. What are the advantages of the pan-Indian character? So it marks the end of small states. It established trade links with foreign countries. It helped the Mauryan kings to face foreign aggressions. And then it helped in economic development because the era of conquest was over. Clear? We will stop our class here. It's time for your next class. And
Why didn't they try to conquer the southern India?
They conquered most of it. It must be very far. I mean, by that time, we don't know. Maybe by the time, first he concentrated on Kalinga. That was nearer to Patliputra.
Yeah.
So when at the end of Kalinga only, he decided not to wage any war. So he must never have gone south.
Ma'am, who conquered Northeast India? Because yesterday
Northeast India was not in their part. They did not conquer.
in the maps it was conquered.
No, Northeast India was not there. Up to Bengal only they did. Okay. So, okay. Now I think I have to log out because the next teacher will be trying to log in. Okay. See you. Bye.
Bye, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am. Bye.
Bye, bye, children.